It is 5:45, so I will call to order the October 7th, 2023 regular meeting of the Hendersonville City Council. We begin with a silent invocation for people to pray or meditate as they choose, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll rise, please. Join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have time at the beginning for public comment. We have 6 people signed up this evening. Is there anyone online seeking recognition to speak?
Madam Mayor, we have one hand raised.
Okay, so we have one additional person. Okay. When I call your name, if you'll come to the microphone and give your name and address for the clerk's record, please. Maximum of 3 minutes, and if you could keep it to 2, that would be even better. So I appreciate that. Tom Appleby.
Hi, my name is Tom Appleby. I'm in Batcave, P.O. Box 21. I just wanted to address the city council and the mayor. We do have a homeless problem, and with the new budget coming up, it'd be nice if you could dedicate 10% of your budget for homelessness. And I know this homeless crisis in the city isn't really being addressed. But really, I'm here to talk about the kiosks, which were put up on the historical section of Main Street. And to me, it has violated my civil rights. It used to be free to go to the beautiful historical courthouse and walk through the museum. But now we have a new kiosk where now you have to pay. And it takes a lot. You know, and now with the colder temperatures, I hope everybody up here will use the kiosks, see what it's like to use it on a cold, wet day. There's a new traffic pattern in Main Street. If you ever notice, the cars pull up, they see there's paid parking, and they back out and they drive away. And I have a lot of movie pictures of cars backing out of the shopping district. So it's harming the shopping district. And I appreciate if you would pay attention to me, Barbara, because the last month, you weren't even listening to me. And I spent a lot of time to come here every month to prepare a statement for 4 minutes to just get cut off to 1 minute and then just not be recognized or even listened to. And they should pay attention to the speakers. Even the tragic story where the person got shot at the McDonald's, I believe is because of negligence, because the people were paying attention to parking tickets, and there was just distress calls for this person, and the person that shot in the McDonald's in self-defense, I believe, should be out because the city of Hendersonville did not protect the manager that was on duty that night. And the kiosks just don't, with all you come to Hendersonville, it used to be welcome to Hendersonville. Now it's, pay. And I'm in the process of hoping to get someone to sponsor some mannequins, maybe in this position, with all of your faces on it. And that'll be, instead of the bears, I'm going to have mannequins, because when you go, it's like, here, pay up, $2, $4. If you want to shop in Henderson, you got to pay the city council off. And I think it's disgraceful. It's horrible city planning. And I don't know whoever signed the contract with Park Mobile and dedicated 35 cents on the dollar that goes to Georgia. I think it's disgraceful. And I think all that money should come back. I heard that there was receipts in the total range of about $60,000 that were collected from all on-street parking along the Main Street Historical Preservation Commission. And all that money should be earmarked and returned back to the shopping district, divided up among the shopper owners in the town. And my time has expired. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you, Mr. Appleby. Clifford Meek.
Thank you, City Council. Madam Mayor, public speaking is not my forte. I'm here to talk about public transportation in general.
If you could give your name and address.
Oh, my name is Clifford Meek. I'm over on Wilkins Street in Lenox Park, zip code 28739. I'm here to talk about public transportation and rail passenger service. I had my city council have a letter of support back in February supporting public rail transportation in Western North Carolina. I'm here tonight to ask that we now go to the federal level. We've had two public representatives in Washington that voted against public passenger service when they voted down on the infrastructure bill President Biden's tried to pass. The bill succeeded without help from either Mr. Edwards. He voted against not supporting Amtrak, and the other gentleman, I forget his name now. But I digress a little bit. Madison Hawthorne, excuse me. I am therefore requesting we talk to the federal level at this time, the executive branch, and asking Amtrak to spend monies on the purchase of the rail line from Spartanburg to Zirconia, North Carolina. That line is currently available for sale. Amtrak has the monies right now to buy it. This can be just a small portion of a rail route that Southern Railroad once had from Charleston, South Carolina to Cincinnati, Ohio. In the meantime, this line can be used for rail service for Asheville and Spartanburg. It could also tie up into the new high-speed rail line in upstate South Carolina. It's in phase 2 right now of 3 phases, in which a new route for just passenger service from high-speed rail service from Charlotte to Atlanta has already been established. This line through Hendersonville can become part of that network in the big picture, going eventually to Charleston and eventually up to Cincinnati. I'm therefore asking that we contact Amtrak. I need to contact our federal Department of Transportation, Buttigieg, and also there's one other gentleman I'd like to be included. Who's on the White House staff, a Mr. Landrieu. He used to be the New Orleans mayor. He's now staff on the president's for transportation. I need, some of this is time related, and it's very time sensitive, so immediate action needs to be done. I left a little brochure of my work. I'll leave with city clerk. But other than that, if any questions, I'll step away.
I have a comment, if that's okay. Mind?
If you remember correctly, the city of Hendersonville and the council voted to support a resolution for passenger rail service from Asheville to Raleigh. On December 5th, Tom Tillis's office announced a $3.5 million worth of grants to identify exactly how this can be, the feasibility of the study. One of them includes a upgrade to a high-speed service from Atlanta to Charlotte, and then from Charlotte to DC. And then there's also currently an additional $500,000 grant, which is included in that 3.5 that runs from Asheville all the way to Raleigh, and then would also eventually connect to Fayetteville. So I just wanted to update you that that is actually already done and already passed and is already in the works.
Yes, that's the other route to Asheville, not the route here.
Okay.
Do we understand?
I'm just giving you an update on the federal grant that came through 2 days ago.
All right, I'm aware of most of that information.
This is good news.
But not necessarily for us. Let's make it good news for us by getting a $500,000 grant for this line. That's where I'm coming from.
Okay, thank you. Jeff Groh?
Good evening. My name is Jeff Groh. I live in Fletcher. Thank you for your service. I see a pattern developing here. Kiosks, railroads, and DEI each month. And we're going to continue to push back on the city on the focus on the DEI and the city spending $147,000 on a DEI consultant who told you she is a Marxist. DEI is rooted in cultural Marxism for anyone who's willing to consider the facts versus being ruled by emotion. Just this week, and these articles or news are happening all over the state and the country, the New Hanover County School Board voted to dissolve their DEI committee this past week. So these kind of things are happening all over the country, particularly after the Supreme Court ruling recently. Since the council decided to promote Marxist ideology, we proposed that the city sponsor a free Constitution class to promote American values. The U.S. Constitution binds us all together. It's why we were all privileged. Initially, the council rejected that offer because it was sponsored by an individual. The proposal was revised, and the Convention of States Foundation, a nonpartisan nonprofit Constitution advocacy group, agreed to sponsor that, but that offer was also rejected. This time, one reason that was given was the Patriot Academy, who provides the content for the course, is presenting their interpretation of the U.S. Constitution. But that did not stop this council from hiring a DEI consultant who presented their interpretation of the causes of social and economic disparity. It did not stop the council from speaking at a gay pride event in June, thereby supporting one interpretation of sexuality. This council clearly has a double standard. In my opinion, the city should not be involved in taking sides in the culture wars or bending to the woke mob. As a city government, you should stick with providing basic services, addressing crime and homelessness. That $147,000 could have been put to a whole lot of better use in the city and supporting businesses. Your refusal to have the Constitution class illustrates that you are taking sides in this debate, and we're going to continue to educate the electorate in the run-up to the 2024 municipal elections and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Groh. Joe Sanders?
Good evening. My name is Joe Sanders. I live at 206 Ewarts Hill Road in Hendersonville. Mayor Volk and members of the City Council, first, thank you for your service to our community. And I'm here tonight just to let you know that I very strongly support the pedestrian plan. The safer we make our city, the more walkable it is. Actually, we need less parking spaces. So thank you for doing this.
Okay, thank you. Don Barr and Jim Lewis?
My name's Dawn Barr. I live at 812 South Whitted Street here in Hendersonville. Mayor Volk and Council, I'm here also in support of the Walk Hendo bike pedestrian plan. I think as Joe just said, I'm in favor of having, I think that's a great advantage for being here in town and being walk-friendly and able to walk around, solving some of our parking issues. But one of the great things about being in a small town like this is the ability to walk around. Thank you for your support on that.
Thank you. Did Mr. Lewis wish to speak?
He's with me.
Oh, okay. All right. Scott Queen. Queeran?
My name is Scott Querin. I live at 504 4th Avenue West, and didn't realize I might be saying some comments, so I'm going to wing it here. But I do want to say that my wife and I have just recently moved to Hendersonville. We moved 11 miles down the road from Arden, which has become completely unwalkable, unrideable. You can't do anything without getting in your car. What attracted us to this community was the very impressive and existing walking and cycling structure that's already here. And so I'm here tonight to both offer my thanks and my support for the Walk Hendo plan and look forward to hearing more about it a little bit later in the agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Querin. And the person who wanted to speak, who's online?
Ken Fitch, you are unmuted.
Ken Fitch, 1046 Patton Street. Tonight, as we go forward, it is important to recognize a significant retirement. As Mac Brackett has decided to retire from the City Tree Board after 23 years of board service, 13 of which as board chair, representing years of dedication and unwavering commitment. During his tenure, the City Tree Board has made significant contributions to the environmental character of the city. Mac himself has never been one to seek the spotlight, but one realizes that his particular role has been to partner with and empower others to join in this important work. So during his many years of service, we've seen the continuing honors and recognitions bestowed as a Tree City USA, the annual Arbor Day ceremonies with the Rotary, educational programs, guided walks led by experts such as Wes Burlingame, Mark Madsen, and Bill Leatherwood, and outreach to school children, then encouraging participation by high school student volunteers, families, and others in the Neighbor Woods projects. Neighbor Woods, an invaluable program to plant trees throughout the city. With recognition that trees are just one element of the vegetative character of the city, an extraordinary partnership was engaged to establish the Bee City designation, with cascading efforts to enhance the city habitat for pollinators. And with recognition of the tree board's growing essential role in protecting the natural environment of the city, the tree board was granted a critical role in reviewing large development projects for their potential impact on our natural environment. Through the years, Mac has shepherded these tree board ventures with a nurturing but sharp sense of their inescapable relevance. As many have experienced in recent years, Mac's most passionate commitment and advocacy has been to preserve and protect the city's tree canopy that now has become an essential priority consideration in planning for the future of the city. Although he may no longer be seen trekking to meetings with his voluminous trove of essential documents, he says he will still work with the Neighbor Woods program, where we may find him with shovel and floppy hat, working to bring new arboreal growth to the city. And yes, we owe him some lasting appreciation for his extraordinary service. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitch, for recognizing Matt.
Mayor Vogt, if I make one comment
Yes.
to Mr. Fitch. So for his service, 20 years, as Ken mentioned, Mr. Brackett will get one of our retiree rocking chairs with his name on it and his years of service. I don't know that that's been presented yet, or has it? Tom, do you know if it's been presented? I don't think so. We're having to. We've got it ordered. It's going to be here, and as Ken said, Mac does not like the spotlight, so he's threatening not to show up anymore. But we're trying to do that so we can recognize his year of service. But he will definitely get a gift of appreciation from the city for his 20+ years of volunteering for the city.
Okay, thank you. Right, first item of business is consideration of the agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to have added to or removed from the agenda? Or a motion to approve as presented?
Madam Mayor, I move that the city council approve the agenda as presented.
Is there any discussion? Not. Those in favor of approving the agenda as presented, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. We're set with that. Consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to have moved from the consent agenda to the regular agenda so it can be discussed? Not. Motion to approve.
Madam Mayor, I move that City Council approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there any discussion? Not. Those in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. We're set with that. Okay, presentations. Resolution reaffirming bias-free policing. Chief Myhand.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. I am Blair Myhand, your police chief. I come to you tonight to ask that you vote in support of a resolution to our residents that the Hendersonville Police Department reaffirms our bias-free policing practices. So earlier this year, through the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the police department took a pledge of the part of what's called the Trust Building Campaign. So that campaign is 26 different standards that we have pledged to meet over a period of 36 months that are designed to help us strengthen public trust within our community and in our police department. So this is one of those elements. We already have policies that prohibit biased policing. So we already practice this, but this is a resolution that I hope you will support that is an outward expression to our community that we adhere to those practices. So if you'll permit me, I'd like to read the resolution and then ask the council for support in that. So the resolution reaffirming bias-free policing from the Hendersonville Police Department to the citizens of Hendersonville. Whereas in a free society, law enforcement is entrusted and expected to protect the civil rights of all individuals. And whereas the overwhelming majority of police officers perform their duty in a professional and impartial manner free from bias. And whereas it is crucial that bias based on discriminatory practices is deemed unacceptable and not tolerated. And whereas the chief of police will review department practices, policies, and procedures to ensure that operational services are free from any form of bias. And whereas the Hendersonville Police Department recognizes that establishing organizational accountability and transparency is the highest priority to effectively promote public trust. And whereas when individual police employees violate laws or agency values, rules, or regulations, they should be held accountable. And whereas the Hendersonville Police Department establishes a policy that clearly prohibits all discriminatory policing practices now, therefore be resolved that the Hendersonville Police Department reaffirms its longstanding position against biased policing and any other type of discriminatory practices. And that is our resolution that we are before you tonight.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for the chief? If not, you have heard the resolution. Is there any discussion? If not, those in favor of this resolution on affirming bias-free policing from the Hendersonville Police Department, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it, and we appreciate you bringing this forward, and we do all support this.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council.
Right, next, recognition for Safety Steve. Steve Alverson and Jennifer our HR director, will explain what this is and make the presentation.
Definitely. Good afternoon, good evening, Mayor and Council. So Steve Alverson, Safety Steve, has successfully completed the requirements to earn the Public Sector MESH, which is the Manager of Environmental Safety and Health Certificate. And the certificate is awarded to individuals who demonstrate achievement through education in occupational safety, health, and the environment. The program strives to recognize environmental managers and raise industry standards and increase the value of practitioners to their employers. So this is the second MESH certificate Steve has been awarded, and we really appreciate the dedication to the city and to the employees, Steve. Thank you.
All right, congratulations. Thank you. All right, next we have our fiscal year 2023 audit presentation. Finance Director Buchanan, you're going to do the introductions here.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. This evening we have Tim Lyons with our auditors Malden and Jenkins, and he will present the fiscal year 2023 audit. Thank you.
I've waited all week for this.
Oh, I know. I mean, I've only got like 116 slides, so if you guys can just sit down. Good evening, everybody. I appreciate y'all having me here tonight. I'm going to make sure I can work this. Brief agenda. I'm just going to go over kind of the high-level results of the audit. We've got a few slides on some financial ratios and trends, a few comments, recommendations, other things we want to make sure we keep the city abreast of. And you know, I've got a slide at the end for comments and questions, but certainly as I'm going, if anyone needs to stop me, feel free to do so. Just as a reminder, we are Malden and Jenkins. We've been the city's auditor. This is the third year we've done the city's external financial statement audit, which includes also the compliance audits of the city's federal and state programs. As John mentioned, my name is Tim Lyons, and I serve as the engagement partner, which means I'm responsible for overseeing our engagement team and ultimately signing off on the reports. Our responsibility is to audit the city's financial statements. The financial statements are the responsibility of the city's management. We are engaged to audit them and to express an opinion on the city's financial statements for the fiscal year ended June 30th of 2023. I always include this bullet point, the fourth item on there, when we have a component unit or a part of the city's financial statements that we don't audit. So we do not audit the ABC board. We rely on the report of the other auditors who audit the ABC board. So we have some communication with those auditors to make sure that they're doing everything they're supposed to do. We get some representations from them, and then we include the ABC board in the financial statements by reference to those other auditors. At the conclusion of our engagement, we rendered an unmodified opinion on the city's financial statements. That is a clean opinion. There is no higher or better opinion. That's the best one you can get when it comes to the audit standards, which means that the city's financial statements are considered to present fairly the city's financial position as of June 30th, 2023, the results of its operations and its cash flows for the fiscal year then ended. The next few slides are what are known as our required communications. These are things that I have to submit to you all in writing, so I'm not going to go through here and read every single one of these, but a few of these I think are important enough to point out. Underneath that, significant accounting policies, the fourth bullet under there is a new accounting standard that we had to implement this year in the city's financial statements. If you flip through here, you are likely to see in some of the footnotes this crazy new thing that the Governmental Accounting Standards Board created called a subscription-based information technology arrangement, or a SABITA. What that is it changed the way that the city, along with all other state and local governments, has to account for long-term agreements where we are essentially subscribing to somebody's IT-related systems, right? In the past, we used to just record these expenses as we paid them. They would just go through our operating statements as an expense. We made the payments under the agreement. Now, we recognize a subscription asset for the value of this thing over the life of the agreement, and we recognize a subscription liability when the agreement is signed, and the asset is depreciated like any other capital asset over the life of the agreement, and the liability is reduced every year as we make the payments. So this sounds like I'm making this up, but it really is what actually is in the financial statement. So this standard, along with the one we had last year with leases, was a lot of work, was a significant uplift for your finance department. We appreciate all of their help with getting this implemented. So that is a new and different change in your financial statements from the previous year. Now, I always think it's important for those charged with governance to hear from the auditor about our relationship with management. During the conduct of the audit, we ask for access to lots of information. We ask for access to lots of different people across the city's organization. We received full cooperation from management. We never felt like we were not getting what we needed or not getting access to whom we needed during the conduct of the audit. And then lastly, I always want to touch on independence. If we were not independent of the city, then we could not render an opinion on the city's financial statements. So not only do we have to meet our AICPA professional standards, but government auditing standards imposes even stricter independence rules upon us as the city's auditors because of the compliance work we have to do with regard to federal and state statutes. And we meet all of those requirements to say we are independent of the city. Specific to the federal and state compliance audits, we did have 3 programs we had to audit this year. We go through a risk-based major program determination every year as stipulated by the Federal Office of Management and Budget on the federal side, in accordance with the North Carolina State Single Audit Implementation Act on the state side. We audited 3 programs at the federal level: the Community Facility Loan Program and the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds, or more commonly known to everybody as ARPA. And then on the state side, we audited the city's expenditures of the Powell Bill money for the local street program. And we had unmodified opinions on compliance for both of the federal and the state reports. And we had no internal control issues or other items that needed to be cited in those reports. A few slides quickly on some financial trends, kind of an analysis of your general fund compared to the last couple of years. So as you can see in fiscal year 2023, kind of a big jump up in inflows and in outflows. And a lot of that is just indicative and reflective of the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, the ARPA dollars, coming into the general fund and then being spent in accordance with the revenue replacement or revenue loss program as stipulated by ARPA. Fund balance, that green bar there, continues to grow a little bit but hold relatively steady. So positive trends in the general fund balance. This little snippet here comes directly from the data input workbook that we have to complete and submit to the LGC at the conclusion of the audit. Minimum threshold of general fund balance, LGC requires 25%. Anything below that, and they would sort of kind of indicate some concerns, if you will. General fund was right at 30.75, just under 31% at the end of the fiscal year, which again is fairly consistent with the previous fiscal year. Yes, ma'am.
Where it says the median of similar units, what does the similar units stand for?
It is, I forget what the expenditure thresholds are, but it's looking at all of the municipalities in the state, and it groups them together by total general fund expenditures. I forget for Hendersonville what that cap is. I know at county governments, I think it's like 100 million and less, they group all together, but I forget what it is for cities.
Right, I believe ours is greater than 10 million.
Okay.
Budget.
So we are compared with some very large, so anything over 10, anything over 10.
A lot of organizations. Yeah.
Anything over 10 million. So we're compared with Charlotte. And so if you look at the median fund balance level of 46%, I mean, here we are, 16, it's hard to compare apple to apples on that. And I think the city council's policy has been, you want to have adequate fund balance, but you don't want to have too much fund balance because you want to make sure whatever tax dollars you take in are being spent for the citizens versus in our bank. And I think that has been the policy that council has basically established in our fund balance policies. That's why we locked in on the 25%, which is what LGC uses. Anything below that will impact any borrowing that we may have in the future. So Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
A chart here just looking at assessed value and tax rates. Property tax rates stayed consistent from 22 to 23, and assessed values kind of grew a little bit, which is one of the reasons why, if you look and compare, you'll see an increase in property tax revenue from fiscal year 22 to 23. But as you can see here, that is the result of increases in assessed value, not increases in tax rates from 22 to fiscal year 23. General fund budget results. Actual revenues exceeded the final budget by approximately $360,000. Largest individual variances were, again, property taxes and investment earnings. Prior year investment earnings were super low because interest rates were rising rapidly and everything was just, kind of a mess with everybody's fixed income investments. Now that we've sort of digested those rapid rises, things have sort of normalized a little bit, and depositors are starting to receive a decent amount of yield on their deposits now with interest rates being as high as they are. Actual expenditures were below final appropriations by $934,000 or so. The largest individual variances have to do with general government. There's usually a big contingency line included in that group that was not needed to be spent, and public safety, which from looking at and talking with John, usually it's just the result of open positions and vacancies and those things. The final budget reflected a budgeted use of fund balance of about $1.1 million, whereas the city added approximately $1.8 million to fund balance during the fiscal year ended June 30th of 2023. Briefly, the city's enterprise operations. The city reports 4 enterprise funds, which are those activities that are tracked and accounted for and reported on similarly to how a private business would report, where we're focusing on charges for services and recouping those charges from customers and third parties. The environmental services budget, we show that revenues and expenditures were relatively consistent with what we budgeted. That net change there, that negative $350,000 is consistent with what we budgeted to use from an appropriation of fund balance. We appropriated actually $361,000 and used a little bit less than that. Similarly, in the stormwater budget, again, final numbers relatively comparable and in line with what we budgeted. And again, our other financing source, that appropriation of fund balance, the net change was actually less than we were budgeting to use. In the water and sewer fund, we see that revenues and expenditures were varied a little bit more from the budget. At the end of the day, the water fund did add $712,000 to fund balance at the end of the year. And we've got a slide coming up on the water fund's debt covenants. That's the most important part of the water fund, is making sure that we're compliant with the debt covenants and the rate covenants we have with regard to the outstanding revenue bonds for the water and sewer funds. And in the parking services fund, much like the other 2 funds on the previous slide, we budgeted to use almost $900,000 of fund balance in our fiscal year 23 operations, and ended up using only $708,000 or so.
One point, and I don't know if Brian wants to touch on the parking services fund. It's a new fund. A lot of that was into the construction of the project. And so we're, and we didn't have a full year of revenue associated with that. So
that's correct. Previous discussions, standing up the fund, we had transferred funds in from the general fund to prop it up until the meters had really established themselves on Main Street and had a full year of revenue. So this is only reflective of 3 months of revenue for the parking services fund.
And as I mentioned, this comes directly out of your financial statements. The water and sewer fund, the revenue bond rate covenant, we essentially, this shows how there is a requirement of the city's water and sewer fund, because of its outstanding debt, to generate revenues and net operating income and net income sufficient enough to continue to pay the principal and interest on the revenue bonds. That first one is we look at our revenues, we look at current expenses, and current expenses is that number there, that 18.6 million, will add back some of the things that we see in the financial statements that are non-cash, like depreciation on capital assets is a non-cash item. So we add some of those things back to or I should say subtract them from the expenses we report in the financial statements. And the surplus fund, that number there, $6 million, is essentially the ending balance at the end of last year of our unrestricted cash and investments in the water fund. So that first calculation looks at revenues plus 20% of the surplus fund, and we compare that to current year expenses, current year debt service on the revenue bonds, and current year debt service on other indebtedness. And as you can see, for both covenants, looking at revenues plus the surplus fund and revenues, just revenues alone, the city was compliant with both of the debt covenants for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2023.
One couple comments around the water and sewer fund and our debt covenants. Just remind council, several years ago, we went to the revenue bond model. One, to make sure we were being accountable to our utility rate customers, it is a way to ensure that money generated by the utility is used to operate the utility, that money is not diverted to any other, it's not diverted to the general fund, it's not diverted, it is used to promote a good utility, strong infrastructure, and it really keeps us on task, making sure that we meet these covenants. It really is from a financial position to make sure that we are meeting those conditions or those covenants, and make sure we're running a financially sustainable utility. So I think it's important that we made this change under the direction of the council several years ago to ensure that we do run a very professional, efficient, financially sustainable utility.
Okay, last couple slides here. This one here deals with new GASB pronouncements, so changes that we will see in the financial statements. The second one on here about compensated absences is the one where you will likely see a change. Thankfully, we get a little bit of time. We don't have to do this next year. We get 2025. But this new standard essentially changes the way that governments have to recognize liabilities for accrued leave. Right now, we focus on this idea of leave being vested versus non-vested. And if an employee separates, do we have to pay it out versus do we not have to pay it out? The new standard has kind of changed that concept and removed it and looks at a couple different things. So there will be in fiscal year 2025 a new way for all state and local governments to recognize accrued leave or compensated absences. The other thing I would point out down here, and John and I have already taken care of the city's submission to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. But if any of y'all do or are used to using that to maybe go and look at things, pull down like report, look at the federal expenditures, what have you. The Federal Audit Clearinghouse has changed. It was with Census. It is now with the General Services Administration. That changeover has been less than smooth, and we'll just leave it at that. And so in the past, we used to have this 30-day requirement. Like we would finish the audit, and we had 30 days to submit everything. They've waived that this year because of how bad the website is. It's still kind of a mess. But we've taken care of the submission, and we've not heard back that we've done anything wrong. But we've submitted that. We've submitted the audit to the LGC as well, and it's also been approved and accepted by the LGC. And just a reminder for y'all, we do free quarterly CPE for our governmental clients. Most of the time it does focus on technical accounting stuff, but we do have a large governmental advisory services practice. So periodically we'll do things about risk management, IT, budgeting, those types of things. So if any of y'all are not on this distribution list and would like to be, feel free to get your information to John or to Crystal, and I can make sure that you are contacted or on the distribution list for our quarterly sessions. And with that, I'm happy to take any other questions that you all might have.
A couple of comments. Just want to remind council that Malden and Jenkins are your auditors. They're not staff's auditors, and they're not. So if you ever have any questions, they are your, if you want to meet with them independently to ask questions, they will be available for that. But this is, as city council and representative of our citizens, our residents, they are there to provide, as independent, to make sure that we're doing what our staff is doing, what they need to do to protect the finances of the city. So I just remind council of that. So if you would ever like to contact them, we'll be glad to give you. I know as they run up to the audit, a lot of times they'll reach out to various council members and folks just to ask questions, and the mayor to ask questions, so they're available. Secondly, I'd like to thank Tim and his team, as well as congratulate John and Crystal and their finance team. I think we have probably one of the strongest finance teams in Western North Carolina, if not the whole state. master's level accounting CPAs. We got 2 CPAs on staff and a master level accountant, and then a great team. So they do a really good job. Really proud of them, and appreciate what y'all do. They are a lot of times are the unsung heroes. They're the ones that have to hold our feet to the fire and tell the city manager, no, we can't spend that money and do that. So, but thank you for what you do, John, Crystal, and your team. Thank you.
Any questions?
I have one. The ABC board, you say it hangs out there separately. How does that fit in with everything? I'm not questioning, so I don't want to get phone calls, about the ABC board. But I was just curious, how is it a different piece that doesn't get audited? Is that the only one like that?
So So the ABC board does get audited, just not by us.
Okay.
So they have their own separate board and their own separate management team, and they engage their own auditors.
Okay.
They have to be brought into the city's financial statements through a concept in governmental accounting known as a component unit. And because there are several criteria that the ABC board meets, it gets brought into the city's financial statements as a component unit, it's a separate organization that the city is considered to be financially accountable for. And so that's why it has to get brought into the city. This is a very common, nearly all of the ABC boards, there are a handful across the states that are not across the state of North Carolina that are not considered to be a component unit because they're more of a jointly governed organization from several governments that contribute or appoint board members. But by and large, this is a very common thing we see across the state where ABC boards are a discretely presented component unit of a city or a county government and are included in the financial statements, but are not included in the financial audit that we do.
Right. And I served on that board for quite some time. I knew we had audits because you always were standing over them, hoping everything was great.
Right.
But I didn't want to leave it hanging out there that they didn't get an audit.
Yes, yes.
They are also audited and then pulled in here.
That's correct.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And we would not be able to pull them in if we had communications with their auditors and we felt like their auditors didn't do what they were supposed to do. So in that case, we would then have to do some procedures to feel comfortable with the amounts and the balances that are in the city's financial statements for the ABC board.
Other questions or comments? All right, well, thank you again this year for working with us.
Of course. Thank y'all.
And just ditto, thank you to staff for the great job you guys do.
Jeff.
Jeff.
Right. Next, Walk Hendo.
Good evening, council. Excited to be here for this project to introduce the adoption of the Walk Hendo pedestrian plan. To just right out of the gate, want to thank first NCDOT. Their grant helped to fund this project, so couldn't happen without that support. And also City Council for your financial support for the match that helped to fund this and for your support throughout the planning process. Also have to specifically thank the steering committee that helped to provide guidance for this planning process. And I want to specifically, for introducing our consultants, just commend the public. A pedestrian plan is a very specific topic to plan for. And so in my career, many years of doing this and working on several different plans, I was really blown away by the level of engagement from the community on this very specific topic. Whether it was through the steering committee, the open houses, or the survey, the city really showed up in regards to this. So they should be commended for that. So kudos to the public and kudos to the consultants. This traffic planning and design is the consultant team that led this effort. Very creative, very knowledgeable, very responsive, and they've been a pleasure to work with. So I'll turn it over to them, Christy and Christy, to go into the details. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, members of council, thanks for having us. I am the Christy Carter of the Christies, and I'm here with my coworker, Christy Stout. And Matt stole a little bit of my thunder that I was going to first start with acknowledging the steering committee, because there are some members of our steering committee who are back here. And I also echo Matt in thanking the public that's made this a really fun plan. And also, Matt sent some nice words to us, but I had also planned to say some nice words to staff, so I'm going to do that now instead of the end where I'd planned. You all have been really fun and good to work with. I'll say the same things Matt said, very responsive, very creative, just kind of willing to work with us to get this done, and we've enjoyed our time with y'all. So I'm going to run through the presentation and hopefully do that quickly. And what we're asking for is adoption of the plan if you're comfortable doing that. And I'll start with going through the plan goals very quickly. These plans are really about connecting people to places in your community. And how do we do that safely? And how do we do that through policy? And how do we do that through just celebrating a culture of walking? And the plan projects and the policies and the recommendations all relate back to these goals that the steering committee helped us develop. The why of this plan is important, particularly as you are sitting there as council members, understanding why the adoption is important. One, it just gives that vision for multimodal connectivity, which your community is very supportive of. It is an important document to help for funding your future partnerships, whether that be through federal grants, whether that be working through the MPO, or whether that be working through local funders. It supports just multimodal goals in general in terms of how do you walk, how do you use greenways, how do you use transit, and then it helps guide developer participation, and I'll talk more about that, but that was an important piece of this plan as well. Just a quick overview of the milestones. We started back in April of 2022, so it's taken us a little while to get to where we are tonight, but we had four steering committee meetings, 2 big public meetings, a couple of different site visits, surveys, meeting with NCDOT to vet the projects, and just throughout all of that, just kind of talking to folks and collecting thoughts about projects and what should happen in Hendersonville. Now I'm going to walk you through the plan. I'm going to walk through most of it until we get to the projects, and then Christy will come up and talk about those. This part of I think we had a slide that got shifted a little bit, but this is the important part of the why, that NCDOT over time has been evolving with their complete streets policy, and where that complete streets policy is now, that if you're a town for your size in that 10,000 to 50,000 range, if you have a project, you have a line on the map in an officially adopted plan that lowers your participation rate. So if DOT were to come through and fix, what's one of our projects, Christy? Orleans Road. I think that's a city road. one of those mini DOT roads that you have in your city. She's going to go through those, but what they should do is look at that plan and say, what is the plan for pedestrians along this road? And in the past, it required a higher match, but now that they changed their formula, and now that you will hopefully have this adopted plan, that will guide and help DOT take on more of that cost share. The other reasons why this plan is important, and I'm going to really hone in on number 2, and that's maybe the only time tonight that I'll be a wet blanket, that for the cities in North Carolina that are comparable to Hendersonville, you will have the highest pedestrian cross rate in the state for cities your size. And that guided a lot of the recommendations that we have in the plan. Also, you have people who really do want to be able to get around by bike. We want to be able to get around by foot, and they want to be able to do that safely. And we heard that over and over again. We also know that a lot of people are moving to this area, and they're moving here because they want to be able to get out and walk and bike. And then just a couple of other things to highlight. that because you're doing your Gen H plan, this was good timing. We were able to really think about what can we do in this plan to set up some policy recommendations, or at least some conversations through the Gen H plan in terms of land use and how developers may participate in helping you build out that network that your citizens want. Community engagement milestones, I mentioned a little bit about this. One meeting with DOT, 4 meetings with steering committee, 2 public meetings, 2 surveys, and 2 site visits with staff. One plug is that I have to give kudos to your folks who helped us publicize the meeting. It's been one of the most pleasant experiences in any community that we've worked in. And then we're going to switch over to the project development process, and this is where Christy will take over, and I'll come back in a minute.
Good evening. Just make sure I know how to use the pointer here. Okay, there it is. Now I advance the slides. Okay. So I'm Christy Stout. I'm an engineer. Been practicing for over 25 years. And we head up this office here in North Carolina, focusing a lot on pedestrian safety. And so that's what we do every day. So really excited to work in a town I'm very familiar with. My kids went to school at Hendersonville High. I'm down here every day. So this was really exciting. And my task here was to look at the network that you have of pedestrian facilities and help develop future projects and help you all figure out a way to prioritize those so that you know where you want to put your money first. So the way we did that is we sat down with a GIS map. For those of you who know what that is, it's a map that has different layers you can turn on and off. And we looked at every greenway, every sidewalk that's existing in town. And then we looked at on the primary road network where there's missing sections. So we drew all those projects in, knowing that, you know, roads that are busy, roads that have a lot of traffic, or roads that are right downtown, we need to be able to get around. So we laid all those in, and then we went to the public and the steering committee and said, are there any other projects you want to see? Because we really focused on the primary network. And there were quite a few projects that came up. One that came up repeatedly that maybe wouldn't have popped to the top of our list was something along a road like Orleans Avenue, because the school and people wanting to walk on that. So we took all that input, put it into our network, and we had quite a list of projects. So then it's, well, how do we prioritize? Where do we want to go? So we also realized that there are city streets that aren't going to rank as high from a safety perspective because they're lower speed, lower volume roads where traffic conflicts aren't as severe. So we grouped it by city streets and by DOT-owned streets so that you kind of have different categories. And then we scored them. So the scoring process, you can see the graphic here has safety, connectivity and destinations, and equity. So for safety, we looked at things like how wide is the road? So if a pedestrian has to cross, how many vehicle lanes are they going to have to risk their lives crossing? The speed of that roadway and the volume, because those are things that are going to really increase an issue, their safety, be negative for safety if you have to cross. And that's also a concern if you're a pedestrian walking on a roadway and there's a gap and you need to walk out in the road to get around it. So that's less safe than to get out in the road. So those are the thing, that was the safety piece. And then connectivity, we were really looking at things like the hospitals and downtown, parks, schools, key community resources. And are we making sure we have those connections prioritized? And then equity. So we looked at what's called Transportation Disadvantage Index, and it's based on things like older populations, younger populations that may not drive, disadvantaged community, historically disadvantaged communities that haven't been underserved. And then I'm thinking what are the other things that went into that one?
Vehicle ownership.
Low vehicle ownership, yeah. So it takes into all that, and so we gave scores based on that so that you really have an idea of some of the underserved communities and where these projects might be prioritized. So then we had a set of scores. We took it to the public, said, hey, you know, do you agree with the scoring? Do you see anything that seems off? And which ones are your favorite projects? And then we adjusted our rankings based on that. So then we had our results, and that's what we'll go over now. Oop, I went back. That is where I want to go. This is a little hard to see. We took these straight out of the plan document. So I'll read them off, but the map on the left side of the screen, all the green projects those are projects, all the green lines,
And those are the ones that didn't get raised to the top 10. The dark blue are the projects that were the top 10 projects. And we ranked the top 5 DOT-owned projects and then the top 5 city-owned projects. So the ones that were highest, South Church Street, obviously US 25, huge concern. There's some gaps on that. North and South King Street, downtown, Canoga Road, and you can see that. I guess I can point here to do it. That's kind of in this area here. You can see a lot of these are clustered downtown. And then Greenville Highway was another big one. There's some gaps there. And then Duncan Hill Road, that one's out here a bit further, out by the Home Depot and everything, but there's quite a bit of development going in there. And the equity index was a lot higher up there. And then when you get into city-owned streets, the top-ranked project was South Main Street. Obviously, that's a key connection. It's going to be even more important with the Cooster Trail coming in. And there are some sidewalk gaps there. And then Orleans Avenue was the second ranked. Then South Washington Avenue, which is downtown. And then we have one project that was privately owned road and not DOT or not city owned. But because it is so important, we talked with city staff and decided it's probably good to keep that in there. And that is out at Highland Square Drive. Actually, this one was Duncan Hill. I had the wrong one highlighted, but Highland Square Drive out by the Walmart. So you have a lot of development coming in. You have a lot of retail uses, and I've been out there investigating that site, and you see people walking and biking on that road a lot, and it's not particularly safe. So that one rose to the top as well. I keep hitting the wrong one. So the full network map is on the left, and I'll draw your attention to a couple colors. So the purple are the city-owned streets that we're recommending pedestrian facilities. The red are NCDOT-owned streets. And the teal green is another category that we didn't talk about yet, and we're going to call those corridor studies. So those are areas that may have sidewalk, but it's really inadequate. So if you're walking in front of Hendersonville High on the sidewalk and you have 26 has a crash and you have trucks running right down the street, right on your shoulder, or you're getting out of your parked vehicle, that 5-foot sidewalk doesn't always feel adequate. And the crossings may not be frequently enough. So there might be locations where we want better pedestrian facilities to cross the road. And so to solve those problems, it might not be that it just needs sidewalks, but it may need wider sidewalk, or you may need a grass strip between traffic and sidewalk. You may need lighting. You may even want to change the traffic pattern, reduce lanes, narrow the lanes, things of that nature. So those need to be a more collaborative effort with NCDOT. So we defined those top projects as corridor studies, and I'm going to just give you a quick example of what that means. So you will not necessarily see a specific recommendations for those projects that come out of this because they really need a full study. And an example of this, this is 176 Spartanburg Highway, starting up by Whole Foods and Ingalls, coming all the way down to where the city limit is, and that continues to Upward Road. All those red dots on that map are access points. So different driveways. And over the course of 1.72 miles, you can see that's an excessive amount of driveways. That increases crashes. That makes it harder for pedestrians to navigate. It also sometimes means there's a lot of retail uses where people might be wanting to cross the street, but they're having to go to signals, which are spaced pretty far apart. You have transit on that corridor. And so these are those types of corridors that you got to work with DOT to figure out if you do want to make a change, will it be acceptable and how to fund it. Yeah, go ahead.
So what kind of, I don't know the word I'm trying to, like blending or mixing together with like a CTP with, a walk plan and then a complete streets plan from the DOT, how would those all be integrated? Because I know that that particular like corridor is already being like studied. And so then where does this come in when you put those together?
Yeah, so the MPO is your friend in this instance. So they have recently done 3 or 4 corridor studies. We've worked on a couple of them. And I'll go to the next slide, and then I'm going to let Christy chime in too, because it really highlights that. So this is from one that was done for US 25 up in Arden. And so the MPO actually funded the study, or because DOT funding. And during that process, there's a vision and goal setting and engagement of all those property owners. What comes out of it are specific recommendations with costs, Some of them might be spot safety improvements, some of it may be a full corridor project. And then that gets programmed long-term. That could get programmed and prioritized through DOT spot prioritization process, if you're familiar with that. Or you might be able to get, if you all are considering going for like a safety action plan, FHWA has a bunch of money out now for that. Then you could basically apply for implementation grants. So there's various ways to get them done. And it starts from the prioritization. First you study it, then you get it in those long-range plans and the funding gets assigned. Does that kind of answer your question?
Kind of.
Yeah, go ahead if you want to take a stab at it.
I think Christy covered it pretty well. I think the couple of things I'll point out, when you have so Spartanburg is probably going to go on a path, but right now you don't have a vision for that. And so corridor study can help give that vision so that as that makes it through the spot process and you get closer to design and something actually happening on that road, you have a vision to help guide what that might be. So that's kind of taking why we would recommend a corridor study as you're leading up to those projects. And then just one other clarification I wanted to make. Christy mentioned the Safe Streets for All, the action plan. You all are actually covered under French Broad River MPO. For those who don't know, have one of those out. They haven't made a selection, but you'll be hearing more about that and you'll be covered under that.
So once that's done, then you can start applying for grants for specific types of projects. And so this slide.
I think you had more to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I know that the MPO is updating the CTP. And so I guess this would actually kind of be beneficial. This whole plan would be added to the CTP.
And their MTP. Yeah, they'll integrate this.
And it's, I was going to say it's the MTP just so I don't know if everybody's a transportation nerd.
Probably not.
MTP.
Clear up the CTP and.
Exactly. That's where she's going.
So MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization, that's how your transportation planning gets implemented over time. CTP is a comprehensive transportation plan and it's very project specific. The MTP is the Metropolitan Transportation Plan and it's a little bit broader. In this region, both of them have covered the same region. That's not always the case across the state. The MTP is what's getting ready to start updating fairly soon, that Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So when there are projects in there, if you want a project in spot to get funded, you better make sure that it's in the MTP and you better participate in that process so you can get those spot projects in that process and get the funding for them.
And this would fuel that, because Tristan pays attention to this. He's with the MPO. And one of the things comes out the MTP is kind of high level where they develop cross sections. So they'll tell you, we want this 5-lane section road to have a side path, like a greenway on the side, or we want wider sidewalks. And so this information in a corridor study would feed that and give more specifics. So
Sorry, one more question.
Oh yeah, go for it.
So then I vice chair the MPO, and so we just finished the spot 7, and then, so we would basically wait till the next round to add that in.
Yeah.
No. Or no. You're like, wait.
Yes, but. Yes, and. Yes, and. I don't know how long you've been on the MPO, but if you've been on for the last several years, you know that things shift.
Oh, yeah.
And those documents can be amended.
Right.
And so when we're going through this process, just kind of working with the steering committee or talking to the community, you've got to play the game. There's a hustle to get projects done, and you just kind of have to keep working them. Right. And there were projects that I'm thinking just across the region, there have been projects where like, oh, they're never going to happen, but people just kept working them as things change and different funding becomes available. It's important to have at least the plan and the vision, and then just keep working the heck out of it.
Thank you.
That's the non-technical answer.
Work it. That's her advice. So just a couple more details on a corridor study. So there is that vision and goal setting piece. But what it also does is a consultant team would do detailed data collection and analysis. So you can look at your traffic trade-offs. So if you want to add pedestrian improvements or bicycle improvements, maybe that means if you have a really constrained corridor and you don't have a lot of width, that you take some space from vehicles and reapportion it
for pedestrian and bikes. An example might be South Main. I know there's some ideas floating around there about that, where you could redistribute kind of what you're using that street width for. And so you need to analyze traffic to know if it's going to work, and then also to convince DOT and maybe community business owners that it's going to still work for them. And then you come up with a variety of design alternatives and you evaluate them and you take them to the public. So they get vetted a little further, and you get into more specifics with cost, how they could be implemented, what plans might be able to implement them. So there were the corridor studies we had on your list included various sections of US 25. We have Haywood Road, 191 on there, and some sections of US 64 out east of town, beyond DOT's planned projects. So there's a number of those that are really important. So when the MPO comes asking, do you have a corridor study, those would be good projects to submit. And with that, we have 2 more slides. Yeah, just to go back to the policy highlights, I'm just going to go through the headings, or the main categories that we addressed. A lot of talk about leveraging new projects through resurfacing. That's a very affordable way to get infrastructure, to deal with infrastructure. And gave an example, we did some work in Greenville, South Carolina recently where they just went had a long-term plan, and we did pavement marking plans for all of them. So now every time they're repaving a road, they have a pavement marking plan for that, so that it's mostly bike focused, but crosswalks and things like that. So we gave examples of and recommended pieces of, gave examples and recommended just be more take more advantage of resurfacing. I don't know why that was so hard for me to say. Also, a big discussion that can happen through Generation 8 or Gen H is how do you increase walkability through private development projects, particularly as you are looking at growth. We kind of dug into the subdivision ordinance and the zoning ordinance and looked at, are there consistencies or inconsistencies, and made some recommendations on maybe how you could maximize those. We do always know that recommendations like that take some conversation with the development community. What can they tolerate? What are you willing to ask for? We also have a recommendation to develop a street standards manual, and that's another thing that we encourage you to look at through Gen H as you think about your new land use patterns over time. What is the road network? How does that road network need to serve all users and not just cars, particularly in areas that might end up being developed more densely. And then just some tweaks to your fee and lieu policy, making sure that you're getting what you need to actually, if you're saying, okay, Mr. Developer, you don't have to develop, make sure you get what you actually need to make an impact for that exchange. And then finally, just a lot of thinking about how to coordinate walkability and pedestrian friendliness through your future land use plan and future development, and that we looked at land use and transportation patterns, and then kind of going back to the corridor studies, but a lot of your land use potential is along some of those big corridors, but those corridors are also kind of the hairy ones to walk along. So what can you do and think about through Gen H where you're changing the land use pattern and the transportation pattern so that everybody can use those corridors safely and comfortably. And then the last thing I wanted to leave with is in the policy section, like one of the main things is just like kind of keep doing what you're doing. Y'all do good work. And just as we were talking with Brent about putting this presentation together, just wanted to highlight just some of the more recent things, particularly partnerships with DOT, leading pedestrian intervals, which is a type of signal downtown, makes it easier for pedestrians to start walking before cars start moving. New pedestrian crossing at South Grove and 176. And then in the spring, you have another set of projects that are going to improve the pedestrian experience along 64. So those are at Thompson Street, Orrs Camp, Howard Gap, and Fruitland. And then another project that is going to be, it's not funded yet, but it probably will work through, is just more pedestrian improvements at 64 and Oak Street. And things like this don't happen without good relationships, without being forward thinking. And that's just a message that you all and your city is just doing good work to try to leverage everything that you can to make the pedestrian experience better for folks. Not to mention all the other stuff happening. But all the good trail work that's happening. So with that, we are going to wrap it up, and we have the projects pulled up, but I don't know that we need to go through them. But if you have any specific questions, we're happy to answer those.
Any more questions? Comments? No? You did a
So-
good job of covering it.
Yes, so thank you, Christy and Christy. So from a staff perspective, obviously, as you know, our team will champion these projects and help them move forward through the MPO process and through our budgeting cycle. Maybe some things that we want to talk about at your retreat in the spring. I know that our past pedestrian plan followed, there was a bond issue following that, and lots of things were developed, and that plan was fully implemented. So something to think about regarding sidewalks and thing. And I know that Councilmember Hensley, as she champions projects through the MPO, and will be very attuned to what's in our pedestrian plan and bicycle plan and everything. So more to come as we implement the plan.
Kind of I should have asked it before. Did you look at Locust Street at all? Does that, and I don't know if it's even in the mix, and I'm talking about behind Bruce Drysdale.
Yes.
How that,
Yep.
and I had a parent call me. They walked their kids to school from, what's the street, Highland?
So,
Well, yeah, and that's part of it too, but
Locust Street was on there. Looking at, I've been on that before. It does have sidewalk the majority of the length, from what I recall.
on one side, I think.
Yeah, on one side.
Yeah.
And so one of the things you can do, so I've done some,
May I interrupt you just? There's a
Yep.
school up the hill,
yes,
and it leads over to another school too. So
yep.
what they pointed out to me, there are no crosswalks,
On which part are they concerned about? Crosswalks on Locust?
all on Locust.
So,
And
Christy,
I may have stirred up something here I didn't mean to.
No, that's good. They do have one at
I'm a new
8.
guy, so I have an excuse.
so I will say that, Locust, we do have sidewalks on one side with the school, after your concern, and mentioned it to the chief, and they've increased some patrols in there. But one of the problems with Locust is, particularly from what is Bearcat, other than that one intersection, actually it's 8th Avenue, other than 8th Avenue, none of the intersections line up. They're all, it's Locust, and then they don't line up in the four-way intersection. So it's hard to do crosswalks in a mid-block situation. That's one reason I think in that particular situation that we don't have a lot of the crosswalks are at the four-way intersections, which is at 8th Avenue, and it is at, I don't even know, we don't even have one at North Main, because they're all kind of three-way or T intersections and it's hard to put a crosswalk, to encourage people to cross when there's not a four-way, when there's not a stop sign.
What's 8th Avenue? What is that? Is that coming down the hill from Bruce Drysdale?
No, it
It's the
is.
one beside it.
That's where Guidon.
Yeah, it's the one down, right?
Yeah.
That's what I
So
thought.
so Bearcat's the one that dead ends into Locust, but it doesn't go through, right?
Right.
So it's a T intersection versus a.
And that's where you go up if you're coming from the north side.
So
Well, we did hear a lot of comments about that area because we knew people that are above 191, Druid Hills, right? Yeah, that area, they want to walk there because of school, and they've been told by the school not to because of the safety issues. So one of the things we put in our action plan are some safe routes to school planning. So this is something I've done for communities before. And a lot of times what you'll have with schools themselves is a need to look at how do you identify the specific routes students are taking, or can you do a remote walk-off, drop off and walking school bus type thing? So there are ways to work with the school specifically to look at their travel patterns. That road, because it had sidewalk, didn't get prioritized as like new sidewalks, but we do recommend crossings and safe routes to school audits. Yeah, so not specifically, but you can ask for walk audits through, I don't know if NCDOT is still doing those.
I would just say that I think 2 weeks ago, French Red River MPO just hired a Safe Routes to School coordinator. So that's going to be a new resource that hasn't been available to communities. And as Christy mentioned, it is sometimes the school things, there's a big education piece that needs to go along with the actual infrastructure piece. So using that as a resource, and as she was mentioning, walk audits, and we did, to a point as well, we did have to, when we're looking at prioritization, when you have a lot of needs, if a street has one sidewalk, sometimes that does fall lower in the prioritization.
And we do have the one purple project up there. I'm trying to remember because I mapped all these. I should have it in my head. One of those is either so basic.
On the right.
Yeah, right here, this one here. And then we were looking at the east-west connection there too, a need for some improvements, because that was an area I knew was problematic, but I think we focused a little bit more on the missing sidewalk gaps and then safe routes to school type recommendations. So I'm not sure if that helps. It is we have a scope of work when we do these projects because they're funded by NCDOT, and we only go so deep in those. So yeah, that is probably an area to dive deeper with safe routes to school.
When you got the information that they felt like it was a safety issue, where did that actually come from?
It was word of mouth from a resident that said they were told not to walk their kids. Yeah. That was word of mouth at a meeting, so.
I know it's been a hot topic of discussion that we've had with the school system.
Yeah, I mean, that's problematic. You want
Very.
kids to be able to walk, right? So,
So
To explain that, I don't have kids that young now. They can't walk to school?
Bruce Drysdale's not allowed to walk their children to school any longer.
What about kids that walk to school without
They're not allowed.
I'm gonna stop.
yeah, that's. So might need some infrastructure improvements to make that safer. Any other questions before we? Okay, thanks for raising that. It was a good point. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for having us.
Okay, all right, council, any discussion or a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move the City Council resolve to adopt Walk Hendo, the 2023 Hendersonville pedestrian plan, as funded by the North Carolina Department of Transportation in conjunction with the city and as completed and presented by Traffic Planning and Design, Inc.
Is there any discussion? Not. Those in favor of approving the Walk Hendo plan, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. All right.
Thanks again.
Move to the next phase.
I want to grab them out.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we have one public hearing this evening, and that is a standard rezoning for Living Savior Church.
Yes, I am doing stand-in for Ms. Hunt. She unfortunately has not been feeling well. So everything that's done well about this presentation is her responsibility, and anything that's a mistake is mine. So this is rezoning, standard rezoning, an initial zoning for a property that was annexed by the city of Hendersonville. Go ahead and go to this first page. We received the annexation application for Living Savior at 200 Upward Road. You voted to annex this property during your October 5th meeting. The applicant has not requested zoning, and therefore the city is initiating initial zoning for the parcel from Henderson County Community Commercial to the city's Commercial Highway Mixed Use Zoning District. And the future land use designation for the parcel is High Intensity Neighborhood. This slide shows existing land use and zoning in the area surrounding the parcel in question. There are a number of parcels that have previously been annexed into the city, Dario being one of the more recently developed parcels there in the triangle. All of those have been rezoned CHMU. A little further out, Upward Road, of course, we get to the I-26 interchange. There's some C3 highway businesses there. But you'll notice that there's a lot of Henderson County, what do they call it? Community commercial in the immediate vicinity of this parcel. Just community commercial for the county designates a variety of retail sales and services, public and private administrations, offices, and all other uses done with adjacent development surrounding community, and allows up to 16 units per acre for residential development. These are a number of slides, images of the parcel in question. So you can see that first one there on the left is the view back towards the Dario site and towards East Henderson High site, and then looking towards along the eastern boundary line towards the north of the property. Some additional site. So it's a cleared site, previously cleared. View along Vine Drive or Vine Road, which runs adjacent to the property, and then, view from Upward Road. So, as far as the future land use is concerned, the city's 2030 comprehensive plan designates the subject property as high-intensity neighborhood. The parcels fronting Upward Road also carry the same designation. Parcels to the north of the property along Upward and Vine are designated as medium-intensity neighborhood. There is the presence of natural resource and agricultural designated areas to the east and northeast of the subject property, primarily floodplain, and neighborhood activity center just to the southwest, which is the intersection of Upward Road and Spartanburg Highway. Oh, one other thing that I'll just note, the parcel is within the Upward Road planning area, which we've discussed previously and was adopted by City Council in 2011. The application was presented to the Planning Board on their November 9th meeting. There were no public comments or questions during the public comment period, and the motion passed unanimously. As relates to comprehensive plan consistency, first order of consideration is future land use. There are a number of strategies here that we have found this proposed rezoning to be consistent with, and you can see those on your screen. I'm not going to read through every one of them, but the proposed zoning district, I would note, is consistent with the development guidelines, which is the encouragement of multi-story mixed-use buildings and placement of higher intensity uses close to boulevards and major thoroughfares. So this location and corridor is very consistent with that. Land use and development, the proposed zoning district is consistent with the goals under LU 1 and 3, which are to encourage infill development that utilizes existing infrastructure and to promote fiscal responsibility with development, annexation, and expansion of the Hendersonville's ETJ. A population and housing, the proposed zoning district is consistent with strategy 1.1 and 3.2 to promote compatible infill development and encourage mixed-use land use patterns that place residents within walking distance of services. There are no goals, strategies, or actions that are directly applicable to this project as relates to natural resources, natural and environmental resources, and/or cultural and historic resources. Water resources, proposed zoning district is consistent with strategy 2.3 to enable and encourage low impact development practices in stormwater management. Of course, that is true throughout. Transportation and circulation, we are on a major boulevard within the city along Upward Road, and the proposed zoning district is consistent with those strategies to encourage mixed-use, pedestrian-friendly development. In terms of general rezoning standards, compatibility, the second criteria is to determine compatibility of the proposed zoning with existing and proposed uses in the area. We have seen a number of uses developed under CHMU along this corridor and compatible given the vehicular traffic along Upward Road and I-26 interchange and the developing retail and commercial uses along the corridor. Changed conditions is also to be considered. Upward Road has seen quite a bit of growth, and given the proper proximity to the interchange, we continue to see development that is occurring as a result of that, and CHMU provides us a good way to manage that. Public interest. Again, commercial development along this corridor is a benefit to the city. CHMU provides an opportunity for that to occur. Public facilities. The site will be served by city water and sewer, as well as city fire and police. Upward Road, as I noted, is designated as a boulevard on our comprehensive transportation plan and is maintained by NCDOT. Vine Road is also a DOT road, is primarily used to access an additional parking lot for the neighboring East Hendersonville High, primarily for school bus parking. There are some residential parcels located further down Vine Road past the high school lot. Effect on natural environment. The property does have some mature trees along the Vine Road corridor, but is otherwise open and does not have any floodplain or floodway. So the the planning board adopted or recommended the following consistency statement, finding that the rezoning is consistent with the 2030 comprehensive plan based on the information, the staff analysis, and the public hearing, and because LU7 calls for primary and secondary recommended land uses, locations, and development guidelines, which align with the proposed CHMU zoning. We have a draft reasonableness statement and rationale for approval, and also included a denial statement should you choose. And that is all that I have.
Any questions? All right, thank you. Has this public hearing been advertised in accordance with general statutes?
Yes, Mayor, I believe it has.
All right, then we will open this public hearing. Is there anyone here from the public who wishes to comment on this rezoning? Anyone who wishes to comment? Is there anyone online who seeks recognition?
No, Madam Mayor.
In that case, we will close that public hearing. Council?
Don't think it's gone unnoticed that, Debbie, you started it, and then you each passed the little short motions down to me. So I'm getting hazed here, so.
I mean, I was going to fall on this sword, but if you want to fall on it.
Nah, I know what you were doing. I saw you. Anyway, so here we go. Madam Mayor, I move City Council adopt an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the City of Hendersonville, changing the zoning designation of subject property PIN number 9578-90-1278 from Henderson County CC Community Commercial Zoning District to City of Hendersonville CHMU Commercial Highway Mixed Use based on the following. The petition is found to be consistent with the City of Hendersonville's 2030 comprehensive plan based on information from the staff analysis, and because proposed property zoning provides design standards which align with most of the designs and development guidelines outlined under strategy LU-7.4 of the city's 2030 comp plan. Furthermore, we find the petition to be reasonable and in the public interest based on the information from staff analysis, public hearing, and because the commercial highway mixed use is a zoning district established for the Upward Road planning area. 2, the commercial highway mixed use zoning district is well suited to achieve the goals of the comprehensive plan for this area. 3, the property is located in an area designed as a priority infill area according to the city's comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Not. Those in favor of the motion for the change of zoning for the subject property, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Thank you. That has been taken care of. All right, new business. An ordinance to authorize the demolition of 734 First Avenue.
Madam Mayor, members of council, requesting the city council to consider an ordinance to order the demolition of 734 First Avenue West. This is a condemnation action by the Community Development Department. Just a little background on this property. It's a fire damaged, burned home, which we initially noticed for violation and condemnation in early '22. We re-noticed again in '23 after lack of action and some clarification on property ownership. We held an administrative hearing in May of '23, at which point, as the zoning administrator and code enforcement officer, we issued an order to demolish. The deadline for action to demolish was back in June of '23. We have not had any action on the property and found that the premises are especially dangerous and prejudicial to the public health and public safety. And because of the property's liability to fire, the bad condition of its walls, the collapsed roof, and the damaged damaged walls, we found the structure unoccupied and that its damaged condition is likely to contribute to blight, vagrancy, and be a danger to children, and so issued that order to demolish. We are now asking for, and these are some images of the property in question. We are asking that the City Council adopt an ordinance directing the code enforcement officer to demolish 734 First Avenue.
Any questions, discussion, or a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move that the city council adopt an order directing the city code enforcement officer to demolish 734 First Avenue, Hendersonville, North Carolina, as presented.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Not. Those in favor of approving the order of demolition, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Take care of that. Thank you. Right. Connection Center update.
Good evening. Things have been moving along for the Connection Center, and we're going to be bringing an agreement to you for approval. And we wanted to give you an update and a chance to ask questions before December 14th, I believe, is a special call meeting that we would be bringing this back to you for approval. So please, anytime, stop, ask questions. Okay, just as a quick recap, City Council voted to give some funding to this project, and in particular, $800,000 as part of your supplanted ARP funds. And then we received a $1.5 million grant from the Dogwood Trust through the work of our city manager, and so it's about $2.3 million that has been generated to put towards this project. So what has been spent and what is getting ready to be spent? So back in April of this year, the city entered into basically a management services agreement with the Connection Center in order to give them some funding to be able to operate while they were trying to find and get control of a building, a premises, a place to operate from. So City Council approved spending $120,000 for that back in April. That agreement is to run through June 30 of 2024. In other words, it's for this fiscal year. And then So as part of the $1.5 million and the balance of the $800,000, I guess it's public now that the Opportunity House was identified as a site to house the Connection Center. And so that was previously owned by a nonprofit that went into receivership, and so it became available. And so long story short is that the city has an opportunity to purchase an ownership interest in that building. At this time, we're looking at proposing to purchase 36% of that building, which would be the balance of the $800,000 or $680,000, as well as then issue the $1.5 million in the form of a construction loan. So let's go a little bit more into the weeds on that. So the agreement that will be coming to you in December is called a tenant in common agreement. And so it outlines the city's role in this. And so in going through this whole process, we've been looking at trying to build a sustainable model in which it provides stability to the facility and to the Connection Center, the Hendersonville Connection Center nonprofit, as well as protect the city's tax dollar, okay? So that it, so what we've come up with is where the city would actually own a percentage ownership interest in the building. And then we would actually provide a loan for the renovation that would secure their half of the, or their 60, I can't do the math, 36 and 64%. It would be secured by their 64% ownership in the building, such that if the building no longer were to ever be used as a connection center, the city could foreclose and take ownership. And basically, that's where the stability and support comes in from the city to help guarantee the long-term success of having a facility for people in crisis, as well as protect the $1.5 million investment that's going to go into the facility through the form of a construction loan. And then as, again, part of the sustainable model is that every entity that goes into the facility, so as you're aware, I'm skipping a lot, but as you're aware, nonprofits are going to be housed in the facility to provide services to these people in need. And so the tenant in common agreement requires that a lease be entered into with all of these nonprofits and a fair market value rent be arrived at. And so as part owner, the city would be entitled to 36% of those rents. And those rents would be put into a property maintenance fund to help generate a self-funding mechanism, so that to help lower the likelihood that the city might be asked to come back and actually fund repairs and things on the building in the future as part owner. And then the Connection Center itself would be operated by the nonprofit, but the tenant in common agreement also provides that they would be required to hire a property manager so that they can spend their time providing services and not as a landlord and property manager.
Angie, how many nonprofit organizations are going to go in there?
So Rachel Ingram is here, so if you have any questions about the operations, she's here and can answer those.
Hi. Right now we have about 14 nonprofits. We also have a list of people, especially now that the news has come out that we have this bigger facility than what we were previously looking at. We have a constant stream of people. I have 2 meetings scheduled already this week for nonprofits that also want to join. And so we're looking at probably nearly 20 service providers that would include nonprofits and then also some government organizations. So like the Department of Public Health is one example of a provider who might come in and offer like flu vaccines or something like that.
So did you have something else you wanted to say? Okay. All right. So because this was owned by a nonprofit, anything that's done with the facility through the receivership process has to be approved by 2 governmental agencies. First, the Attorney General, and the Superior Court has to approve the distribution plan. And so the Attorney General early fall approved the plan. The tenant in common agreement was presented to them. They're aware of the city's involvement, that the city would have an ownership interest in the property, and the Attorney General gave its approval to the plan. And then the Superior Court considered it in November and issued its order week before last and approved it. And basically, the idea is, from a public policy standpoint, they want an asset of a nonprofit to continue to be used for nonprofit purposes. And so that's why the Attorney General and Superior Court had to approve the plan. So the next steps would be for you to approve the tenant in common agreement. Then we would close on the building, and then also on the construction loan. And then the building renovations could begin. And then after it's complete, the lease agreements could be signed and it could be occupied and open for services. That is a very high level, but I'm happy to answer any detailed question that I can, or I'm sure Rachel will too, if you have any questions about it.
I have one. What is it, about 20,000 square feet?
It's 19,900 square feet.
It's close.
You're on it.
That's really close.
Close, those eyeballs on it. Has an architect looked at it?
Yeah, so we've engaged Tamara Peacock Architects. They've already been in and taken all the measurements, and they've gotten me the first round of drawings, which show a proposed 3-phase renovation project, so that we could begin offering some services sooner and, kind of scale the renovation that way.
Have they given you an estimated cost for these renovations?
That's what's coming next, but not yet.
We're supposed to vote on it before we have the cost, because if you do $300 a square foot, which is probably low, what we've seen is around 400, you're looking at $6 million. If it's 400, it's $8 million. Where does that come from?
Yeah, we're not necessarily looking at new construction numbers, and so there's a lot of infrastructure in the building that can be carried over into the new project. We have additional grant funding beyond what the city is holding from the Dogwood Health Trust and the ARPA funds, and then we're also looking at working with some capital campaign consultants.
But
I don't know that it's going to be $6 million to renovate it.
Yeah, I just threw those numbers out because, I think they're running into over 400 at the VFW square foot, some of that number. And I know this is one level. It's different, but that's why I went down to 300.
I did speak to a commercial appraiser, and I think that commercial renovation rates are still running like 347 estimate right now per square foot.
So one idea I've had, and I've discussed with, again, not trying to control the project at all, but is that you ask the tenants to renovate their space as opposed to trying to renovate everybody's space for them, and that focus on just the major structural components to be used, to be funded by this money and their other money as a way to help control the costs for the connection center. One other thing is, if it would be a construction loan, no checks would be written until there is a plan put in place, just like a regular construction loan. This is just to authorize entering into the arrangement whereby once they have all of that, then they could start spending those funds. But we don't have to close on the construction loan right now. I think they are anxious to get started. The only piece that we really have to complete is the purchase, because our purchase of an interest in their facility is the funds that are being used to pay the receivership, that are being used to pay the creditors. So there would be no reason other than them wanting to get started right away. But from our standpoint, the 1.5, and we do have some deadlines in the grant, I believe, that I would need to check since it's a grant. But
how did you come up with the 36% ownership when it's all being paid?
Okay, great question. So the way it was put together is that we got a number from the receiver as far as what was necessary to pay off the creditors. That number is $505,000. And so the appraisal on the facility was $1,890,000. And so when you divide $505,000 by $1,890,000, that's about 27%. And so then the Connection Center reached out and asked if they could have more of the ARP funds. And so basically the way that John and I proposed it back is we'll buy some more interest in the building to give you some funding. And so the rest of the 800,000 came up to 680,000. So if you divide 680,000 by the value of the building, 1,890,000, that is 36%. And it allows them, so we're actually buying an asset for the money, as opposed to just making an outright grant. That's how the 36% was arrived at.
What's the total again for the loan? What you're paying off is what?
505,000.
And that includes a small buffer for any additional
It does.
creditors who might come forward who haven't been identified by the time that they did the court proceedings. So a portion of that, a small portion, maybe 40,000,
I think it's like 60.
is going to be held in escrow.
And the balance of those funds would go back to the Connection Center. But again, we would be getting an asset in exchange for that 505,000, and that is 27% ownership in the building.
Wait a minute, 27?
For the 505,
Where did I see here, 36?
well, 505 is what is necessary to pay off the creditors.
Right.
So when you divide that, that's by the value of the building, that's 27%. But then they asked for the balance of the 800, and rather than just make an outright grant, we responded and said, well, if you want that money, you've got to give us a higher percentage. So the 505,000 became 680,000. We started out with 800. We gave them 120, which left 680. So basically, the simple way to look at it is they've asked for the balance of 680. And so we've said we're proposing to, rather than just make an outright grant, that we purchase an interest in the building so that we have an asset in exchange for the tax dollars. And then it gives them the cash that they need to, so like of your 120,000 that you gave them, I believe some of that was spent on architectural services. It wasn't just for administrative. And so the 680,000 minus what's owed to the court will give them another 175,000 to pay their architect and their attorney and proceed ahead with the plan of renovation. So from our standpoint, I've been trying to approach it from a protect the city's interest and protect the city's dollars in this and provide a model so that if, I'm not saying it would, but heaven forbid something happened in the Connection Center nonprofit was not able to sustain it, the city would already have an ownership interest in it. The city could basically foreclose on the deed of trust and take it and have the facility. And then
Just owning 36,
I'm sorry?
even with just owning that minority.
Because we'll take a deed of trust on their interest for the 1.5 million.
I'm still really nervous about raising the money to really do it up. Can you get a CO if you let several parts of it unfinished with the intention of the tenant finishing it? What would you have to build out? Are you going to have a kitchen? You've got to have showers and that.
Right, those would be components of it. It's important to remember that there's currently tenants in the building and have been this entire time. So it's currently in use. It's not totally dilapidated inside.
No, I've been in it. I understand that.
Yeah.
But I know it's old. See, I'm old and I used to go with my mother to pick groceries up there.
Yeah.
So I have a vague memory of that.
Yeah.
But that scares me to death. Just how much it could be without a real solid plan.
Yeah.
I know you're protecting the city's assets, and that's good. But that, I'd like to see a better picture there. And the only reason I'm kind of hogging this is because this is my first chance to really question it. So I'm not beating it up. I'm just being what I've grown up as. I've got to have questions on
Absolutely.
how does it make it.
When it was at the original location, and I guess I was a little bit too under the impression that Henderson County was coming in with a share, and then the city was coming in with a share. When did that change?
Some of that predated me. So I was hired into this role in June of 22. So it's been a little over a year, but that was part of where the ARPA dollars went a little bit higher, was to compensate, because there had been some preliminary conversations just prior to your ARPA vote where the county kind of indicated that they weren't going in that direction anymore. don't know if that totally answers your question, but at this point,
Say no.
I'm sorry?
Did the county say they weren't going to do it?
I think it was let be known that at the previous location, they
Right, I
were not interested in participating.
But how about since it's another one? Has anybody asked them to give us some money?
Not formally, no. Yeah.
So of course, we would charge them fair market value rent for their space and for the health department and Department of Social Services. I do expect that.
No, we're talking about the money that they.
Oh, I know.
To
Yeah, flat out be a partner in it.
original
I understand.
Capital funds.
I can't speak. to
I don't, yeah, I'm
I
sorry.
don't know. I don't know. I mean, part of this has been conversations, just informal conversations, but I don't know that. I think the county was using their money, particularly the money that they were going to use. Their ARP funds went to specific projects. I think some of the money that the county was going to use was the opioid settlement money, is what they had been discussing, and they are using that predominantly for drug court and some other things that so that money was been allocated in other ways. So my understanding is. The county allocated their ARP money into other projects, and the opioid money was going, they chose to put the opioid money to other projects. That's what I recall the conversation being.
One other thing I do need to mention is the property will have to go through a rezoning at some point. And so it will be coming back before you for approval through the rezoning process. I think that, Lou, the Connection Center property, they could use it right now just for office space for the Connection Center. So they could go ahead and move in but to open it as a full-fledged Connection Center, day center type facility will require a rezoning. Any other questions? Would it be direction of council to hold off on the construction loan piece and just move ahead with the purchase of the 36% interest? Because that's what's going to help fund the studies that are needed to know what needs to be done to the building to get it in a shape to where the structural components so that it could be occupied.
If we did that,
Mm-hmm.
and the construction loan, it came back scary, what would happen then?
So the city is going to, right now, only be on the hook for the $1.5 million. It's part of the grant. We are going to record a deed of trust. If they got another construction loan, we're going to be ahead of that other construction loan in recording. You know what I mean? We'll have first lien. Once it gets beyond our construction loan and getting that recorded, that deed of trust recorded, I will have to defer to Rachel to talk about what might happen beyond that.
But if we just did the tenant in common agreement in
Mhm.
680,000,
Mhm.
we would have 36%.
We would own
interest,
36%.
And that'll be secured also by, right? I mean, that's a loan.
No, we would own.
Yeah, we would own, that's right.
But no, the deed of trust comes in with, once it's time to open it, so the deed of trust is going to secure the $1.5 million as well as their obligation to operate it as a connection center. If they're ever unable to operate it as a connection center, we would foreclose on the deed of trust, yeah.
But if we loan them the 680, we'll have the interest. We'll be part owner. And if for some reason Connection Center does not go, they would sell the property. We would get our money back if it was sold, right?
We would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would they sell it or would we sell it?
It would take both.
It would take both people, and
we would get
how would the money be?
So,
How would the money?
so a couple things, in the tenant in common agreement, we would have the right of first refusal to buy them out, okay? Or together, we would sell it, and then the money would be apportioned 36% to the city and 64% to the court would basically, again, have to say what happens to that other money, I think, if Connection Center were no longer viable. If Connection Center is viable, they would get their 64%.
But when you say buy them out, that kind of indicates that there's capital investment on their part, but there wouldn't be any, right?
So, okay, that's a great point. So their capital investment, they're getting the equity in the building just in exchange for operating it as a nonprofit. The court has granted.
That's how the court sees that.
That's exactly right. The court has given them that equity in exchange for their willingness to operate it for this nonprofit purpose, so that equity is still continued to be used for nonprofit purposes. They're not having to pay any money, cash, for their 64%. It's a service-based kind of thing. So it's a great question, great point. So they once they get their 64%, they then have a capital investment they have an asset that's worth 64% of $1.89 million that they have a capital investment that's just been given to them by the court.
And if it failed or didn't happen, then the court would then again decide.
If they were no longer viable, but if they're viable, then, and we sold it, they would just get their share and we'd get their share. But I think, yeah. But so the way this could have worked is that the facility just got sold and then the court would divide the cash up among a lot of nonprofits. And so let's say they weren't viable and it got sold, the court would then divide their cash among nonprofits so that the equity is converted into cash and still used for nonprofit purposes.
Is that the only percentage that the court operates on? Is this 37, 60, whatever percent? Where did those numbers come from?
So the amount that the court ordered to be deposited to pay off the creditors was the 505, right. Which left 175 in our bank that they asked for. So we said, okay, if you want that, then the only way we're willing right now to give you that cash is through a sale as opposed to an outright grant. So if you divide 680,000 by the value of the building, it's 36%.
Okay. So it was a math.
It's just math. It's just math.
Standardized.
Right. Our money equals 36% of the value of the building. And so that cash is paying off, it's still being used for nonprofit purposes because it's paying off the creditors of the Opportunity House with the balance of the funds going to Connection Center to be used for a nonprofit purpose. So basically, all of the Opportunity House is being continued to be used as a nonprofit purpose. That makes sense. Very complicated. So, any other questions?
Any more questions tonight? Thank you for the update.
Okay, thank you.
Next, 7th Avenue Streetscape Project. Yeah. This is what everyone should have stayed for.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. We have, I'm Brendan Shanahan, city engineer. We've been making strides in this long-awaited project recently and wanted to provide you all with an update. So I and Jamie Carpenter and Lou Holloway are here to kind of team up on this presentation to you. And Lou, I believe you're first, is that right?
Sounds right.
Okay.
This is like the token slide for Lou to talk about how 7 years ago we started talking about streetscapes in 7th Avenue. So just really want to say that we have been on a engagement road around 7th Avenue. And honestly, the opportunity as we've kind of come into this, and Jamie's going to do a great job of talking about what we've been seeing happen since we've gotten real about the streetscape, is just that the city made a specific turn towards 7th Avenue back in 2015 when we brought the MSD into the city and began working more directly with staff to develop projects and plans for the district. And it was in 2017 that the streetscape project first showed up in the annual downtown work plan. So that was when the folks in that district were brainstorming about what to do, what things we want to take on, and how to take those things on. And it really kind of kickstarted a larger discussion. So you can see some of the key timeframes there. We were at the precipice in February of 2020, literally a different world than the one we live in today, to move forward with the 7th Avenue project. And you all sold design plans at that council meeting. Of course, we know what happened. That changed a whole variety of things and really kind of slowed the implementation of that project down. But we are back and excited to be moving forward. And Jamie's going to talk a little bit about all of the positive things that have really been happening in the district since we really started talking about the streetscape. And we connect those things to the investment that the city is making in the streetscape.
Yes, good evening. So I started in 2020, so I was asked Lou to say what happened before I was here, because I wasn't quite sure how it all got to this point, which knowing it's come a long way. So in 2020 was when we started the Hendersonville Farmers Market on 7th Avenue, or on Maple Street in the 7th Avenue district. That had been in process for a couple of years to try to bring folks and bring attention to that district. I feel like it's been really successful. This graph shows the increase in visitors to the district that have come based off of cell phone data that we get through calculation software. So in 2017, it was about 83,000 visitors to the district, and this is the whole 7th Avenue district. And then now you see this past year, 145,000, almost 146,000 people have come to the district. So it's bringing a lot of attention and bringing a lot of folks here. And it's just growing year after year. So that's really exciting. So about 44,000 new visitors have come. Also with the Hendersonville Farmers Market, we're really proud to have 2 of our vendors who have brick and mortar businesses now in the district. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better success story than Lana with the homemade pasta noodles and Stacy with Mini Batch Bakery. Also during that process, we did our branding, which is showing up in our slideshow that we have today. We all presented to y'all about this it was about a year ago, almost. It was this meeting last year that we had presented our branding project. And so we've been implementing that, and that will be incorporated in different areas of the streetscape. We had about 50 people who participated in public meetings about what they think the district is. And they were also given information about the streetscape project coming, knowing that it had been a longer process than it was initially when it was supposed to start back in 2020, but we know what happened then. We had representatives from businesses, property owners, almost every, or a large majority of the business and property owners within the district were there, as well as individuals and representative or people from the Green Meadows neighborhood. And then the public were invited to all. Also, since 2020, we've had people who've been really interested in buying and investing in properties in the district, partially because they see what the city's vision is as far as improvements in that pedestrian infrastructure for the district. Overall, since 2020, there's been about $1.5 million in private investment by property acquisitions and improvements since that year, or since 2020. There's also been 11 new retail and restaurant businesses that have opened in that district since 2020. At the Friends of Downtown have awarded 8 different facade grants to provide improvements to those areas or to those properties, with a total of $18,700 from the Friends of Downtown. That total project cost from funds that we gave grants to was $173,000. So just to show that people are seeing and are ready to build based off of the plans that we've been given them, as far as they see the vision that we have for that area, as far as landscaping, streetscape, and just helping that slow the traffic down in that area. And I'll turn it over to Brendan.
Thanks, Jamie. So now to talk a little bit about the specifics for the streetscape design and the project. So it has various sources of funding, including these listed here, the 2020 bond, 2021 bond, water and sewer reserve fund, stormwater, various fund sources, Powell bill, general fund, 7th Avenue, MSD fund. So there's a lot of different interests in this project. And so some of the design milestones we've had include survey, which is performed by Ed Holmes, streetscape design performed by Watermark Landscape Architecture and city staff, who Watermark has been very flexible with us and engaged throughout the long period of this design, and we really appreciate their work. And we arrived at a final design and advertised it in August of 2021, and it didn't get any bids, and the second solicitation in October didn't get any bids either. So we had to kind of reassess our approach to the project. We looked at soliciting Seymour approach for the project, and in 2022 we chose Harper. And I want to acknowledge and thank Harrison Sloop from Harper for being here this evening, representing Harper. And so the big status update is that we have rebid and opened bids in November 28th and again today. I'll run through why this project has some of the reasons why it's taken us so long. Of course, as Lou and Jamie indicated, the pandemic was a significant challenge. Supply chain issues and inflation, those are all things that have affected all projects over the last few years, and this one was no exception. And one of the things that we saw with this is that because of the complexity of this project, and the contractors that were so busy, they were hesitant to put in bids and commit themselves to it. Also, other things that came up was DOT had involved us in a potential project in the intersection of North Grove Street and 7th Avenue that was intended to improve pedestrian movement through there. And that kind of made us have to rethink design kind of at the last minute. Also, one of the things we had to consider was when would be the best time to advertise and start construction for the project in order to minimize the disruption to businesses in the district. Now, I just wanted to run through some of the design elements that to highlight some of these elements in the project. One of the purposes of this project was to increase the pedestrian experience as well as have more traffic coming. So we narrowed the lanes and added bump outs in the design there. The lane widths are 11 feet. This is at the intersection of 7th and Locust. Those green dots are where the traffic lights are situated. Also, you'll see some of the street trees and the varieties of trees that are there, as well as those yellow dots are streetlights. I wanted to highlight some of the stormwater control measures, the innovative stormwater control measures that we have on this project that we don't see elsewhere in our streetscape projects. For example, bioswales. Now we do have some soil cells on Main Street, but each of the street trees will be set in those. This is kind of a different type of soil cell than we've used before. Water and sewer improvements. That top image shows proposed water line replacement, and you can see that the existing water main there is a 4-inch cast iron line that was installed in 1922. So we'll be upsizing that and replacing that with a new main. In addition, that section of sewer that's shown in the image below was installed in 1922, and we'd be replacing that as well. So now I want to touch on a few optional elements to the project. Locust Street was one option. We wanted to make sure that depending on the funding that was available, prioritizing 7th Avenue and having Locust Street as an option. In addition, some underground telecommunications work, placing conduit for AT&T and fiber optic as well is another one of those alternate. This option is an expansion. I tried to overlay the existing with our proposed plan. It's difficult to see, but we're proposing to expand that island a few feet, narrowing the slip lane to 12 feet and narrowing the lanes on North Grove Street as well, in addition to providing a little bit of space for gateway signage, which is illustrated on the lower right corner. Lighted bollards and retractable bollards. The top image shows the intersection of Locust and 7th, and the lower image is at Maple and 7th. And those would be, I guess, really used for the farmers market in particular, and types of events like that on Maple Street. So I mentioned earlier, back to the bid opening, bids were received and opened November 28th and December 7th for various trades associated with this project. And as you can see, there's several. And the good news is that we have bids that were in the range of what our estimates. So we found that to be encouraging. And next steps, Harper will compile the bids submitted and present GMP for the city to consider. The city will evaluate costs of optional work and decide what scope to pursue based on available budget. And we hope to begin construction in January or February. Harper, in coordination with their subcontractors and area merchants and property owners, will expedite the work to limit the closure of roadway and disruptions to business. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
So a couple of comments to dovetail on what Brendan has provided with you. Just wanted to update you about the project. It's been a while since you've seen it. A lot has gone into it over the last 2 years. We do have a budget, and as Brendan says, we have bids now. And so we're going to be reviewing those bids between now and early next week, our staff will be getting together. Monday afternoon is our plan, so that we want to bring you a guaranteed maximum price at your just special meeting on December the 14th. If we're comfortable, we're going to get together and look at what financing we have. We will not bring anything to the council. Just want to commit unless we're 100% comfortable. If we don't do it on the 14th, we'll do it in January. But we hope to do it next week on the 14th. There will be, so Brian and I and the team will look at it on Monday, looking at we do have a finite budget. There's not a lot of extra money in the budget so we'll be looking at the base bid as well as some of the optional items. We'll bring those to you ultimately for council to approve as part of the GMP. We will give you your recommendation. I know our downtown and the downtown committee and 7th Avenue, Jamie has advocated very well for their wishes. We have several, we know what they want, and we'll look at that as it relates to the budget. City management may make some recommendations. I'll give you, looking at the total budget, relocating some of the overhead utilities, one from a pricing standpoint, two, as it relates to timing of the project, may or may not be doable. Staff, the administration will have to make some kind of recommendation to city council regarding that. But that is a desire. Jamie has advocated. I want to give her credit for that committee, but that may have to be a recommendation from the engineering team and city management about whether we do or don't do that piece, because it may, one, delay the project, it may be too expensive because of price escalation through the time. So we're going to review all that, put it in hopefully a nice box with a nice bow on it for Christmas on the 14th. But we wanted to give you the opportunity to hear about the project, be thinking about the project again, so that we can discuss it with you on the 4th. And if we're ready, ask for you to approve the guaranteed maximum price to get this project started in January and February so that Harper can do it. So.
And just to confirm, the optionals are included in the bidding process. They're just going to be like kind of separate line items.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And, and if the city wanted us to, the city council wanted us, knowing the priorities, wanted us to go find additional money, that's your direction. And we would follow your policy direction for that. So we'd be crying as we did it, but we'd go find it.
Can I ask a question about the intersection? So I thought that intersection with North Grove, the terrifying intersection, I thought that was getting like totally overhauled, but from that optional larger island that you just showed us, it does not look like that's happening.
Right. So the DOT had had presented us with a kind of a sketch concept where it did involve basically a complete overhaul of that intersection, the slip lane going away, and work to the traffic signals there, and the phasing. We had worked with DOT to try to come up with a plan that would dovetail with our project, as well as not negatively impact business owners in the area. And after having conversations with business owners, it appeared to us that would be particularly negatively impactful for a business, the Celtic Creamery on the northwestern.
Basically couldn't reach. I hate to jump in here, Brendan. Basically couldn't reach agreement with Celtic Creamery. The property owner, that if we close the slip lane, that would basically make their drive-through window unusable, and so could not reach any agreement with them, and it would require an extensive legal battle to do that project. And DOT, I think, chose not to move forward with it.
Correct.
Because of that potential legal battle.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah. All right. Looking forward to January, February. See some work being done.
Congratulations, you guys. I know it's been a long process.
All right. Okay, next, schedule a special city council meeting, Thursday, December
Yep.
14th, 11 a.m.
Mayor Vogt just asked that we schedule that meeting next Thursday, right before our Christmas lunch at 11 a.m. And again, both those items, we want to make sure we have good information to you ahead of time so we can make that as efficient as possible. And if we're not ready, we will not bring the item forward. And then cancel, and then you would cancel your December 27th meeting.
And it will be at the.
It'll be at the Whitmire Center. Yes, ma'am.
Anything else or a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move that the city council schedule a special meeting on Thursday, December 14th, 2023 at 11 a.m. at the Whitmire Center and cancel December 27th, 2023 workshop meeting.
Is there any discussion? Not. Those in favor of the schedule changes say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Ayes have it. Thank you. And then 2024 meeting schedule.
Yes, Mayor Vogt, members of City Council, we have published in your agenda packet the proposed schedule for 2024. We've tried to include all the meetings that we know of as today. I just want to draw your attention to 4 meetings under the regular meetings that are on days that we don't normally have, one being the February 7th meeting. That meeting would actually be on the previous Thursday. Brian and I are going to be out of town, so we're asking to move that to Wednesday, February 7th. So that would not be the first Thursday. It'd be the first Wednesday of that month, February 7th. Asking if that meets your schedule. Also, the July meeting would fall on Thursday, July 4th. We've pushed that, or asked to push that to Wednesday, July the 10th, almost 1 week later. Also, just point out the council staff retreat is March 14th and 15th. If that meets everybody's calendar, we'll have to determine the location. And then your budget workshop is the first Friday of May as normal, on May 3rd, 2024. And then under your second meetings of the month, the only change there from usual schedule is the week of Thanksgiving. Move that meeting from Wednesday, the November 27th to Monday, November 25th. And we would cancel the November 25th meeting because of Christmas. So, but this is again a draft, and if there are other conflicts that we need to consider, I'll put it before council for discussion.
I definitely have a problem. In September, we're set to be out of town for, I think it's the 3rd, and probably will not get back until at best the 12th. And that's been on the books, can't change it.
So the option there would be to hold the meeting without Councilmember Miller.
It'll be hard, I know.
I know, because the date we would normally move it to would be the 11th, I believe, Jeff. It would be Wednesday, so he's not going to be able to be at either one of those dates. So if the council just wants to continue to maintain that date, a normal meeting, and
So
Mr.
we
Miller.
just keep it,
Yeah.
because otherwise you're getting into like the holiday before and it might just be too hard.
Thank you.
Okay.
We'll get a little cut
Yeah,
out.
the-
To put it in our
Don't do like we did Jim. Cut out.
You guys, I love a council member on a stick. It's my favorite. I will just say that the March 27th meeting is my children's spring break, and we will be out of town. So if there's desire to move that meeting, or if there's desire to just keep it and I miss it, that's okay as well, but that's,
Yeah, I may have to miss one of the.
it is my
second-
birthday also.
I may have to miss one of the second monthly meetings as well, so.
I don't have to miss any of the meetings.
Okay. And as was noted, if something comes up, we can amend this.
Absolutely.
So,
Thank you.
okay. Someone would like to make a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move the city council approve the 2024 meeting schedule as amended.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Not those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it, and we have something to work from. Thank you. All right, boards and commissions, committees, all those sorts of things. Got
I have,
semi-annual long list here.
yep. I have
Okay.
provided a copy of her Jill's memo, hard copy, if you'd like to look at it, and staff can assist, or I'll let the mayor take control, however you want us to do it.
Okay, well, just go on down the list here. Board of Adjustment, we have 3 vacancies, 2 regular and 1 alternate, and we've received 2 applications. Steve Salfield and Terrence Bond. Anyone like to make any appointments to the Board of Adjustment?
Madam Mayor, I'll nominate Steve Salfield. Salfield?
Steve Salfield has been nominated for the Board of Adjustment. Are there further nominations?
Yeah, I don't know these people, so I really can't
Yeah.
speak for it, but,
Mhm.
I mean, if they're willing to serve. Sorry, if they're willing to serve, I don't see a point holding back, so I would nominate Terrence Bond.
Okay. Terrence Bond has been nominated for the Board of Adjustment. Are there further nominations? Not. Those in favor of Steve Salfield and Terrence Bond for the Board of Adjustment, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it, and those 2 have been appointed. Environmental Sustainability Board, we have 2 vacancies and 1 application from Margina Baxter.
Madam Mayor, I nominate Margina Baxter.
Okay, Margina Baxter has been nominated for Environmental Sustainability Board. Are there further nominations? Not. Those in favor of Margina Baxter for the Environmental Sustainability Board, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it, and she has been appointed. Historic Preservation, we have 2 city members renewals.
But I believe you only have 1 representative, or 1.
Okay.
Yes. So Jim Boyd has in good standing, and he asked to be reappointed.
Madam Mayor, I nominate Jim Boyd.
Okay, Jim Boyd has been nominated for Historic Preservation Committee. Any further nominations at this point? Not. Those in favor of Jim Boyd for Historic Preservation Committee, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Okay, we have
Mm-hmm.
1 there and still 1 vacancy. Planning Board, 2 positions, and we have 2 applicants for reappointment. It's Laura Flores and Tamara Peacock. Are there any nominations for Planning Board?
Madam Mayor, I'll nominate Tamara Peacock.
Okay, Tamara Peacock has been nominated. Are there further nominations?
Madam Mayor, I nominate Laura Flores.
Okay, Laura Flores has been nominated. Are there further nominations for the Planning Board? Not those in favor of Laura Flores and Tamara Peacock for the planning board, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Okay. Tree board, 2 vacancies and 3 applications. Oh, my goodness.
Actually,
And one renewal.
and you have one, so you actually
Yeah.
have 4 applicants there, one city resident, and you just need 1 city resident and 1 ETJ member.
Okay.
But then Glenn is separate,
But it
right?
says, in addition to Glenn's renewal, there's,
Okay, you're right. Excuse me.
sorry.
No,
I'll nominate Glenn Lang for his renewal.
Madam Mayor, I would like to nominate Natalie Wilcoxon for the ETJ position.
Okay. Glenn Lang has been nominated for, that's a city,
yes, ma'am.
yeah, representative, and Natalie Wilcoxon for the ETJ representative. Are there further nominations?
So we still need one more, right?
Yes.
Okay. Madam Mayor, I'd like to nominate Stephen Stark for the other city.
Okay. Stephen Stark has been nominated as a city representative. Are there further nominations for the tree board? If not, those in favor of Glenn Lang, Natalie Wilcoxon, and Stephen Stark for the tree board, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it, and we have those positions. And Mr. Conant mentioned the CDBG committee.
Yes, ma'am. The Housing Committee is part of our Housing Advisory Committee, as part of the CDBG. Councilmember Smith, former Councilmember Smith was on that committee, along with Councilmember Simpson, so we need to replace former Councilmember Smith.
Whoa.
Sorry,
Okay.
that's a mouthful to do that.
And this needs to be a council member, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Are there nominations for the open position on the CDBG?
When are the meetings?
We don't. We haven't met.
It very infrequently, just based on,
You just
I can
kind of
speak to that.
Schedule them as needed.
Yeah.
Very rarely. We do need a meeting soon to approve a modification to the financing model, and it'll take 5 minutes, and then I don't expect any more meetings for a long time.
I'm not going to nominate myself.
I would like to nominate Jeff Miller.
Mr. Miller willing to take that
About
position?
time you got
Okay.
on the committee.
All right. All right. Jeff Miller has been nominated for the CDBG. Further nominations? Not those in favor of Jeff Miller for the CDBG committee, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no.
We cannot talk anymore.
Okay.
It's late.
Ayes have it, and that's all with the appointments? Or do we have more?
No, I think that's it.
That's it? All right. City council comments. Anyone have anything you want to bring up? Announce,
Yes.
talk about.
Just to remember December 7th, this is Pearl Harbor Day. We should never forget that.
Anything else? City manager report?
just remind city council, now we have a special meeting on Thursday, but also right after that is our Christmas lunch, where we enjoy a meal with our staff members and our board and commission. So.
Okay. All right, and we do not have a closed session, correct? Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. No closed session. Sorry.
Okay, just wanted to be sure there hadn't changed in the last couple hours.
Sorry.
All right. That being